A quick and easy weeknight kielbasa with sauteed cabbage, apples, onions. It comes together in a great smoky, sweet, tangy flavor, and it's something that I absolutely love, and I think you're about to too. Let's make it. This is a fall dish that really requires hardly any recipe and can go together really quickly. To me, it's one of those weeknight things that you can have in the wings for whenever you need it, but want to feel seasonal, which to me is important. So it's going to encompass cabbage, some apple, because those two work together really well, and kielbasa. Now, I know some of you are gonna be like, I don't like kielbasa. Give it a chance. I think what's great about it is you can keep it ready to go. It's smoked, it has so much flavor. You don't need a lot to make it go far, and that's what can be great about this. It's almost an economical meal, which is even more of a win. So what I'm gonna do is start by wanting to just get some color on the kielbasa. And we're gonna do that in two ways, but first what we're gonna do is put it in a skillet without anything else, just to give it a little bit of color. Now what I am gonna do is make some cuts every so often. This is honestly, it's vanity. If we do this every so often, this is just going to mark it up enough that when it does cook now in the skillet and then later on roast just a little bit in the oven, it'll give it some definition. You know, here's the thing. If you think certain foods kind of are gross, maybe like kielbasa. This is a way to kind of dress it up, make it look like it's, oh, that's interesting, that's fun, and it really is nothing special. So those little bit of marks, we're gonna take it over. We have our skillet here, it's warming. I don't really have any oil in it because one, it's a cast iron skillet, so it's seasoned, but two, I just want it to get some good color. And once we put it on, do you hear that? That's what we want. So I'm gonna let this really warm up. I'm gonna let it start to get kind of a nice crust on it, flip it once, and then remove it. So I just got a little bit of color on this, nothing special. You can see it starts to pull apart those cuts, and I like that too to give some definition. So a little bit of color, like I said, it's smoked, it's cooked. Now what we're gonna do, we have a little bit of butter melting in that skillet. We're gonna cut off, I have an onion here cut in half, and I'm just gonna cut off that root end, and I wanna give a nice slice to it, but I wanna go with it as opposed to against it like we often do. And this is honestly just so, again, so you have some nice pieces here that don't break up too small, but you can see when you kind of fan them out, you see how they have just a nice, kind of just that pretty cut to them. That's all it is for. Now, the butter is gonna give this really good flavor. So we're gonna put the onion in, and what that's gonna do is saute into it. Now, I'm not gonna caramelize this onion, but I do wanna get some color on it, let it get into that butter, and really start to take on some of that flavor. Get some of the browning going on, because guess what? That browning is flavor. So while this is getting ready, while that's all just getting worked up and starting to get that color on it, we're gonna get our cabbage ready, we're gonna throw it all together, we're adding flavor, and then we're just gonna cook it all. As you can see, we're not going for full caramelization here. We're getting them to a point where they're starting to brown, starting to get some flavor, softening. They're even sweeter at this point, and that's why it's important. You know, when you say a step of saute the onion, it's not just because you want a recipe to be longer. It's because this actually changes the flavor and enhances those onions. Believe me, it's worth the step. Make sure to do it, and the butter, yum. So before we add in some cabbage, we're gonna add in some flavors. Why not? I wanna salt it. That to me is just super important. And I'm salting it now because I wanted those onions to really get some color on them first. I want some pepper, just some nice cracked pepper here in the beginning. We're gonna put that right there. And then we're gonna put on, this is a little surprise one, but some mustard seed. Now, the mustard seed is really gonna have, obviously, flavor. It gives it kind of a nice texture. We're gonna add in, not all this, but we're gonna add in some of this caraway seed. Personally, I love caraway. I think it does a lot, and it just really, you know, it's that thing that goes well with cabbage, sometimes sauerkraut. This isn't really a sauerkraut, but it kind of takes that idea. And then a little bit of Dijon mustard. Now, don't get on me about always using Dijon. It's needed. The Dijon adds an underlying flavor that you need. So I'm just stirring it in, letting it just kind of roasting in there, flavoring that. Now, while that just sits for not that long here, let's talk about the cabbage. I'm using Savoy cabbage. Why? I love the crinkliness of it. I love the texture. It holds up well once sauteed. To me, that's important. And what you can see is you can cut it, if you want to make it easier, in quarters. And then when you get to that core, for a quarter, you just can take your knife at an angle, cut out the core. Makes it a little bit more easy for you. And then I just like to slice it up. Don't worry about being super thin, if it's too thick. The thing is here, we're cooking it. So it's gonna take on, it looks like a lot of cabbage. It is a lot of cabbage. It's fall. Let's use some wonderful fall produce. I grow fall cabbage just like I do spring cabbage, and Savoy does better for me in the fall. But when you actually cut it up, it's gonna cook, and it's gonna really cook down, and that's important. So we have these onions here. We have the mustard seed, that caraway. We're gonna add in now all of this. Oh yeah. We're adding it in. And what it's gonna do here is extremely, surprisingly, cook down more than you would even believe. So while it looks like a lot right now in here, and it does, don't get me wrong, I get it, it's gonna cook down and we're gonna let it saute. So we're gonna let this saute, it's gonna reduce, you'll be surprised, and then it'll be ready to go into the oven for a bit. So the cabbage is cooking just slightly, a little bit of the freshness is off. And now what I wanna do is get my apple ready. Now, while I didn't do this in the beginning, that's because I didn't want the apple just to become mush like applesauce. So we're adding them in a little bit after, just one apple. And this makes this super seasonal, super autumnal, but it also adds a sweetness. So we're doing kind of a sweet, tangy, sweet, sour thing with the cabbage. And there's a good reason for that. So it's not just for looks, it's not just for fall that we're adding in the apple. It actually works really well together. So we have our cabbage that's just slightly been cooking, and we're gonna add in some apple cider vinegar. Now it's a good amount, but here's where that sweet, tangy, the acidity from the apple cider vinegar, but the fact that it's apple cider has some sweetness too. So that plays really well together. And it's also gonna just kind of braise with the cabbage, which is important. So we're gonna add in the apple. See how one apple, when you slice it up, you just take the core out, it really actually cooks pretty quickly and easily, but it also is a lot more than you think. So that's kind of the best part about this. So we're gonna put the apple around, and I just kind of want it to nestle in there. I don't need it to mix in that well, because it's gonna steam with everything else. So we're gonna let this, I hear it already cooking. We're gonna let this steam and kind of just braise a little bit. So I'm gonna put a lid on, because that's gonna trap that steam in, actually wilt the cabbage slightly more. We're gonna let that do its work. We're gonna add the kielbasa back in there, and it's gonna become delicious. So this is cooked for a few minutes, and I stirred it a couple times in there just because I wanted to make sure it wasn't getting too, dark on the bottom, and some of that liquid was cooking out as it was kind of braising. You can see the apples are beginning to soften. The cabbage is really cooking down. I'm really starting to smell those spices we added. That cider vinegar is more just becoming sweet and kind of giving that nice tanginess that we want. So now I'm gonna add on top that kielbasa that we actually started browning, just kind of nestle it in there a little bit. Nothing perfect, but just kind of. And we're gonna throw it into an oven. And in the oven, I want the kielbasa more to roast again, get a little bit more color, get some warmth on it, and everything's gonna just marry. So here it is once it comes out of the oven. You can tell it gets some nice crispiness and some good golden brown marks on top. The kielbasa kind of starts more cooking through again and opening up, and that's why I like to make those cuts. Those relief cuts just, I don't know, they make it to me more, there's like a beauty in it more. So then you can just cut off pieces of the kielbasa. That's what I love, and you can just serve it up. Kind of makes it more serving size friendly, if you ask me. So you can just take off some of that. I know, look at those, right? And then you can, some of this cabbage with the apple, which takes on some beautiful color, and that's what I love about it. Now, on camera, that will just be hard to eat also. I'm gonna cut up some of the kielbasa a little bit smaller, which if you wanted to, you could cut the whole thing up like that, serve it up much easier, I would say, which is kind of nice, You could do it, this kind of just works for whatever you want. You can mix it all together even. And then you can go in. Now the smells from this are amazing. Those few spices we added. Oh, it's good. When it hits right? When all at once you were hit with that smoky flavor of the kielbasa, with that sweet, tangy, sweet, sour cabbage, slight apple. I mean, together with that smokiness, it is such a great fall dish. You don't think about it as autumnal, but it really is. Cooked cabbage, sauteed cabbage, braised cabbage, to me, I love it because it still maintains good texture, has a little bit of crunch to it, but is cooked and softened, and it takes on just slight flavor, and that's what's great. So what do I hope you do with this? I hope you maybe try something new that you haven't had, whether it's the cooked cabbage, whether it's kielbasa, the smoky, delicious flavor, or a quick and easy weeknight meal, because that's what this is. It's using seasonal things, but in a new way to make a great meal. So I hope you share this video around, not just because it helps me, but because it helps everyone see this is so doable. Good food to make at home, homemade food. It's quick, it's easy. If I can do it, anybody can do it. Check my website, wiseguide.com, for this full recipe, also in the video description. And all my other recipes are on my website. Until next time, have something that fills the season, but also just tastes good. That's the point.